All right, so we will start again essentially on the line that begins veha-hisbonenut bezeh. The hisbonenut aspect as it is possible by the nefesh habahamis.
Hey, Paltiel. I just because I was yesterday. I was just wondering yesterday. What is the emphasis on that the cold nivre yesh chayis or v'chayis elikia mechayis as opposed to she kol abriya yesh or v'chayis mechayis. That's an easier. You look at the bria, you see it's left. What's the cold nivre? It's like.
I'll explain that. That's exactly what we are coming to. First, what is the principle by hisbonenut bezeh? What is it hisbonenut in the first place? The nefesh habahamis, by virtue of being a living entity, a living nefesh, with intelligence, knows intrinsically that the intrinsically of the world is there, that, like you said, that behind and what affects the intrinsically of the world is the fact that there is a ha'or elikis. This the nefesh knows intrinsically. As we discussed, and I want to discuss a little bit more about this, then come to understanding what is the hisbonenut bezeh. What need the hisbonenut for? The principle that the nefesh, I mentioned it yesterday or the day before, that the nefesh knows intrinsically that there is a ha'or elikis that is mechaya the world. Which means, in simple terms, that as a living entity, it senses, it knows that chayus is something that is being provided for it. Chayus is not of itself. There's no such thing. No, there's nothing lives of itself. Of itself, he can be a foot, he can be a hand, he can be a bone. He cannot be a living entity. The whole principle of chayus is that it is imbued into the chay, into the entity, from a source that is chay through and through. Like we use the illustration of light, and we have clearly distinguished between light and day. The etzem behir, the light that is beyond a functional light, but the essence of light. The essence of light has to come from something that is essentially light, not created by consuming fuel. That can only counter the darkness, but it doesn't create light. Counter the effect of darkness. You don't see, so you see. And what do you see? You see objects. You don't see light per se. The union of being in an environment of light, that is only due to the presence of something that is light in essence. This is the expression in Chassidus I quote many times, that the sun is an etzem behiri. Not it is something that produces light. It's an etzem behiri. It's a bright essence. The only way to elaborate on this statement is that sun, as I mentioned many times, is light through and through. There is not a wick inside the sun that it gets consumed, that produces the light. It is. Can you pass the box, please, for a second? Thank you. Somebody else. Similarly, a living entity like the Nefesh HaBahamis. The Nefesh HaBahamis, as a living entity, knows things through its status as a living entity, not by coming in touch with worldly entities. It's a living entity, and it knows things from a life perspective. And if it knows things from a life perspective, life is directly connected to Elokus. It comes directly connected to something that is life through and through. This is in Elokus. This is life, and this is the life of in general, all life. In truth, even life of the animal level, all life is clearly a representation of the fact that the world has a living base, has an essence of life. This is directly representing and reflecting the fact that God created the world. Vayomer Elokim, and this is how the earth produced vegetation. Tache ho'eres esh. It's a living entity in the earth, and it's a living entity in the tree that produces the fruit, and so forth. So this is directly connected to Elokus. It is only ha'ore Elokis. Why is it a ha'ore? Because you see this light by some kind of a functional result. It is not that you are engulfed by the light itself, by the life itself. You see its effect. This is called a ha'ore. This is something which a Nefesh HaBahamis has without any effort. This is what the Nefesh is. But then there's what's called avoid. What is the meaning from avoid? The meaning from avoid is that everything that was given and established in the world was established for a purpose of further elaboration, further development. It says, "Vashabara Elikim la'asos." Vashabara Elikim la'asos means that the Rebbe created, but he created so that it will then make what it is, make itself in the world. So that you ask the question of, he knows the world has a chayus. That does not touch his practical daily life. This is something that he knows. The Gemara says an interesting thing. When we was talking, it just occurred to me. The Gemara says, "Reitzel l'shakir, yarchi kedusei," which means a person who wants to lie, yarchi kedusei, he will say something. This happened on a different continent, or it happened 10 years ago. He will distance himself from the original, from the place that he is talking about, in order that there's no way to verify it. The same thing is when say the whole world is alive, but it doesn't touch you. This is so to speak, an academic piece of information which has no pertinence, is not no demand on the person himself, and it does not do anything for him. In order to translate this reality in the practical presence of the person, in reality of the person. The reality of the person is not the general life, but he has a daily function. He has to wake up in the morning, he has to get dressed, he has to walk out, he has to do this. All of these actions are representing a specific chayas, a specific element of chayas eliki. And if it does not recognize that there's a chayas eliki in every specific entity, then he can avoid this whole. He will not be participating in what's going on in God's world. He will living in his own. He is satisfied. Yes, he's got life. But what is life about? How do you translate it on the worldly level? This is what the hisbonenut is. This hisbonenut is what brings the infant avodas Hashem at the level of the nefesh habahamis, so that wherever he goes, whatever he sees in the world, it touches him.
I missed the beginning. You talked about how everything's coming from a source that's life through and through. And I missed the part where it's, why does that not touch the nefesh habahamis? Why is this, in other words, the nefesh habahamis, by virtue of being a living entity, gets what? He recognizes that there's a ahara elokis that's coming from a source that's life through and through. But you're saying that does not touch it?
Does not touch it in its daily presence.
It's like more of a conceptual.
It's more conceptual, it's academic. It does not, because he is in the world. When you say ha'ora elokis, we say ha'ora elokis in the pshat what? The function, the effect of godliness. See, he has the effect of God, but it doesn't have anything to do with godliness itself. It doesn't erect his life, his practical life. Practically speaking, he lives and exists in the world.
What does the hisbonenut do for him? Why does that translate now into his own life? What is that?
Because that brings this principle of the godly life to everything that he touches. Like we said, do not steal. So he says, why not? It belongs to him, so it belongs to me. No, it doesn't. That's not the truth. The fact that it belongs to him is a godly command. It belongs to him. This is one of the primary challenges in the whole world. The Goyish world, the whole world throughout the ages. It was his big struggle Yes, of course there is God. But God created the world and he said goodbye to it. Let the world fly on its own. There is even, I would call it a cop-out way of people who are never stuck with the evolutionary concept, and they cannot, in full consciousness, deny its reality. So they say yes, and yes, of course there's evolution, but God started the process. That's not Avodas Hashem. That is not Avodas Hashem. That's not bringing God into the world at all. Instead of the Big Bang, God started, or maybe the Big Bang also was started by God. I don't deny God's presence. But that God brings the sun out to bring light, that's a different story. Doesn't fit in my worldly model. For this, it requires avoid. To actually translate this truth, the godly light, the life, in the specific contours of the world, functions of the world. Why does the sun rise? Because not there is an overall general thing, because that is the type of world that God created. But then beyond that, because God affects it right now, because there's a godly chayas in everything, and therefore this is why the sun rises. He was not kicked off 5,000 years ago.
And if not for the hisbonenut, he would be living with just the effect of the ha'ara elokis.
No, he would not be living with it at all. He would be living with his own being. But his own being will confirm the fact that there is a ha'ara elokis. Like I said the other day, I don't know, yesterday, that essentially the Nefesh HaBahamis, he's impressed with the fact that there is a godly source, because that makes his world real. Okay, the world is a reliable place because there's a life in it. Just as you said, if you get a cut in your finger, it's okay, nothing's happened, just cover it over, it'll heal, because there's life in it. The world today is going out, losing their mind. The world is coming to an end. The effect of global warming, because the world is a totally self-sustaining entity. There's no life in it. It's coming to an end. There's constantly the doomsayers, from the scientific perspective, from the stupid perspective, whatever it is. But the doomsayers are present galore everywhere. Why? Because you see a skeleton world, not a living world. Talking to a doctor, a human being is a living entity, not a skeleton. This is the approach, this is the means by which you approach to heal him. He's got life in it. It's not the chemical, it's the life that you're calling for, allowing to come through. You have a completely different respect for the patient when you realize what's behind this hand. Okay, so now we're coming to the Aveda of the Nefesh HaBahamis. veha-hisbonenut bezeh, the hisbonenut that is allowed and capable, as possible in this truth, that the Nefesh Abam is intrinsically recognizes that there is a world which is essentially brought about by the ha'or elikis, by the godly action. But godly action there has to be. That is the actual testimony of life itself. So what is a misboinen? Eich, in the fact and in the reality, all nivro, that in every creature, yesh oir v'chayes eliki am chayo isoy. There's a present oir v'chayes eliki. There is a godly light that translates and becomes chayes in the nivro. Hamchaya is that gives him life. As we explained the other day, oir means this is which is directly reflective of the elokus, of the source. And then when it's mislavish in the nivro, it becomes chayus. It comes in the form of life. And what is this life? This is a chayus eliki. What does chayus eliki mean? Chayus eliki means a chayus that cannot dissipate. There is on a godly level, a godly reality. That's chayus. World per se, everything in the world is in its essence a temporary presence. Like we said the other day, there is nothing in a physical entity that compels you to say it's going to be here in the next second. It is here now. What does the next second have to do with it? Chayes eliki, this is the chayes eliki. There's a godly presence in it that says, no, this is real. If it's real, it means it is here now, it is here, it will be here next second also. This is the reality that we observe in the world. But we don't realize what we do realize it, but we don't know how to translate it logically. What is it? What makes me so sure that it's going to be here the next second? This you have to use the sechel, his body. The reason, I just want to add this one point, which I felt this morning necessary. The reason that we lose sight of this is very, very simple. It is that we really don't understand what it is. There's no way we can understand what it is. And when we're bound up with our thinking process, with our logic, we kind of are limited to identify with that which we understand. But that which we understand is very surface deep. There is no reality in what we are able to understand. We have been granted a great gift in Chokhmah, that Chokhmah can identify that which you cannot understand. And therefore it gives you a real world. But you have to understand that this which you identify, you don't really understand what you're saying, what you're looking at. So if I don't understand, how do I relate? I relate to it by virtue of my life, of my the koches makifim, the oinigen rotzen. It's real. Sechel has no grasp of it's great enough, the gift of sechel, that it can distinguish between that which we can understand, that we cannot understand.
Sorry, I just missed the one. I'm sorry. What was it? You said sechel can distinguish between that which you can understand. And
That is the ultimate gift of sechel. But he can conceptualize and look, and the chochmah can see that which he cannot understand is a tremendous gift. But that's it. Like we say all the time, chochmah is the underpinning, the strength behind chochmah is oineganrotz, which we cannot understand because it's a reflection of the truth of the nefesh. And again, I went into this to point out why is it so difficult for us to relate to it. Why is it such a challenge? Because we don't understand it. Therefore, the way the understanding process takes place is you understand up to a certain level, and then the rest we leave to the source, to that which is beyond sechel. Sechel leads you up to that threshold. Do I know it? Of course I know it. I know it better than anything that the sechel can identify. That's the reality itself. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's continue. And therefore, since that he has this hisbonenut, and he can focus in each nivro, and in everything that he observes, and see and identify where the oil vechayis eliki that gives it life. Then shalidei veha-hisbonenut veha-mokas hadas. That as a result of the hisbonenut, of the focus in, and then hamokas hadas, then finally, when it touches his Daas, it touches, so to speak, the sense of reality in his mind. Again, this is still in the sechel, but in the sechel there is also a sense of reality. What does that mean? In the sechel there is a sense of reality. Normally, sechel, like we said, sechel is an observer, like chochmah. I see it, but it's not. It's just an observation. This is not my reality. But because that sechel is rooted in oineganrotz, in reality, therefore ultimately it translates in what's called Daas, that this which I'm observing is really real, and therefore it becomes my Daas. This becomes. I don't need to open my eyes every day to look. Is the world still there? I know the world is still there. How do I know? Because I observed it this morning? No, I know it. Because my Daas tells me the world is going to be there. Because I know there's a chayes in the world. There's a reality to it. This is called Daas. Daas is the translation of that which is higher than sechel into sechel. And here's where again the misunderstanding can happen. Now the world becomes real, and now I lose connection to the chayes eliki. One must realize that the reason the world is so real, and you recognize that its reality is due to the fact that you recognize the Elokus in it. Mechayes Elokim. Just exactly the same way as the clock on the wall. It's real. Why is it real? Because you recognize that there is a human being living here. Otherwise, the clock on the wall have nothing to do with each other. So Mami died bezeh. Then he has to delve with his Daas deeply into this. Eich shebechol dover. In the phenomenon that in everything, again, this is not theoretical thought. Oh, I believe it. What he actually identifies with this truth.
When we say Shemayim Daito, that in other words he's looking into his own Das. He's trying, in other.
Yes, in his Das there is a whole world, all kinds of different things. And then he thinks, what is it that I identify with in this reality? And he sees that in Kol Dover Yesh Oir V'Chayes Eliki. And everything that's Oir V'Chayes Eliki. And then V'Shehoyikor Hu Ha'Elokus. And what is actually the core, not the tangible element in this entity, but the Elokus that gives it reality. The tangibility would not compel me to say that this is real. Tangibility is just only a superficial effect. All right, I guess we'll interrupt today. You're tired this morning, huh? Your parents left?
Today.
All right, have a great day.
Oh